2022 Divisional Playoffs Review. Now, this was good football. Good football comes not during wild card weekend. We get the good games in the divisional round. And if you are a real football fan, it's not just about quantity, but it's about quality games. This was the weekend. Now, the first game wasn't so hot. But after that, I mean, you could argue Saturday's games weren't that hot. But we saw good football this weekend. First game, Jaguars and Chiefs in Kansas City, Arrowhead on NBC. What else can you ask for? Well, you could have asked for the quality of the game to be a little better, but I love the NBC broadcast, and what I've meant to say is one of the winners of the NFL season was not on the field, was not a coach. It was Jason Garrett. And Jason Garrett, when he got hired to be on the pregame show for NBC, the man just kept on smiling. He couldn't stop smiling. And can you blame him? He got out of Dallas, and he is on, in my opinion, the best pregame show in football. I think Maria does a great job. She's really tall, which usually scares me for women, but putting that aside, she does a great job. Tony Dungy, I love Tony Dungy, and Jason Garrett was a very nice addition to the pregame show. And Collinsworth and Tirico, at this point, they're my favorite top broadcasting team for the telecast in the NFL. But on to the game. And we had some weather involved. Light snow flurries in Kansas City. Not really much to affect the outcome of the game. The real story here was Patrick Mahomes getting injured, and you wondered about the severity of the injury, and you wondered if he was even coming back out because he had to leave the game. Chad Henne came in, and we found out that it was a high ankle sprain. This was one of the games that adds to his career and his legendary career that he's having, as we are watching one of the all-time great players at the quarterback position. Often I'm hesitant to say that about current players, even quarterbacks, because everything's in their favor. When you have shotgun, you have spread offenses, you have 4 or 5 receivers, you can't get hit. But Mahomes is one of a kind, a truly unique player with what he brings, and he just does things that other players have never done. Not just players of his generation, but those who have come before him. And some players have taken from Mahomes and tried to incorporate some of the things that he does in his game and add to their own, but they can't really do it like him. He was really playing on one leg, and that was enough against the Jaguars. The Jaguars, though, had opportunities in this game. They had, if they just made a couple of plays, they could have won the game. And they, or at least, at the very least, they really could have made the Chiefs sweat. The Jaguars are certainly headed in the right direction. Trevor Lawrence is the only quarterback in that draft, think about it, who is really coming around. And I don't know if he'll ever be quite as good as what he was made out to be when we were all going through the mock drafts and with all the scouting and the combine and all the anticipation, but he's going to be a very good quarterback. And you see the growth in the second year that you haven't seen with any of the other quarterbacks. I mean, Zach Wilson, oof, Trey Lance, ugh. Justin Fields, the only thing that saves him is his legs. And Mac Jones has taken a step back in year two. But this is what great quarterbacks do. Great quarterbacks are able to carry their teams on their shoulders and win the game. And the difference is, more than anything in this one, was the Chiefs had Patrick Mahomes, and he was able to do enough, even in his injured condition. Didn't make mistakes. Chiefs had him, and the Jaguars didn't. But if I was the Jaguars, I would feel encouraged by this season. In many ways, I feel like they weren't really a legitimate playoff team, but they made a little noise here and got to the divisional round. And I think they got the right head coach, they got the right quarterback, they have some pieces, and things are looking up in Jacksonville. But getting back to the Chiefs, because after all, they won the game. Impressive that they won, but looking at the whole team, not impressed. They rely so heavily on two players, Mahomes and Kelsey. I mean, if Kelsey got hurt, it's one thing to say about, you could say this about every team. If their starting quarterback goes down, they're sunk. But if Kelsey got hurt, the Chiefs are sunk. They're done. If anything happens to him, and he's been so healthy. I mean, you think about this run that the Chiefs have had, the key has been to keep their star players healthy. But this team is thin compared to what we're used to, and they are not the same without Tyreek Hill. Yet they're back in the championship game, but they are not the same. Their defense, okay, they made some plays. This is not the same Chiefs team. They advance, but this is one of those examples of a proven team that has won, who has taken a step back, but they were able to use their experience, their home field, to win a game that they should have, but it was not a strong overall performance by Kansas City. We'll talk more about that in the championship game. I want to move on and talk about these other three games more. So I was right with that one. Pick the Chiefs to win, and how many people were picking the Jaguars? The evening game, I was picking upset. Giants and Eagles. And this game could have gone one of two ways. It was either going to be a very close game, or the Eagles were going to look like a super team, the team that was the best team in the NFC, maybe even the best team left in the playoffs, and that's what they look like. The Giants were outmanned, outclassed. They were the ones that came back down to earth. That's what I was going to say about the Jaguars. I did say about the Jaguars in the preview. And they sort of did, but they stuck in there. They did. This was not a game. The Eagles, the question that came in here was how healthy was Jalen Hurts? Well, he put any concerns away immediately. And the big pass play on that first possession, I think it was maybe the second play of the game for the Eagles. He bombs one to Smith. Oh, his arm's okay. His legs look fine. Their offense was clicking. Their defense of line, the pass rush was what it was in the regular season. And this game was over at halftime. The Giants would have liked to have made it a close physical game. They never had a chance. They didn't even have an opportunity to really try to establish the ground game because this got out of hand, and it got out of hand fast. It was some game by the Eagles. I mean, they were ready, and they took full advantage of having the 2 weeks off. And it's extra special when you can defeat a divisional opponent, which they did against the Giants. The Giants had a nice season, and Daniel Jones, big step forward for him. And the Giants, I would expect to keep on getting it better and continue to be in the conversation as a playoff team, especially with, well, this new format, which I don't like, 7 teams. But right now, this is the Eagles. They were the best team in the NFC from start to finish in the regular season. Yeah, when Hurts went down, there was a drop-off. Of course there was a drop-off. But I can't say enough about what the Eagles were able to do. And you saw what the Giants did against the Vikings. The Vikings are who we thought they were. They were pretenders. Good season for the Giants. The Eagles are going to be a very difficult opponent in the championship game and possibly the Super Bowl for anyone. They're a handful, and they have talent, and they're deep. They have a quarterback who can throw and run. They have 2 number 1 receivers in Smith and Brown. They have a top 5 tight end in Dallas Goedert. They have a good running back. They led the NFL in sacks. Congratulations to the Eagles. And even some of those veterans, such as Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham, who've been there for years, and they were there for their Super Bowl, their first Super Bowl championship. Okay, so the Saturday games were okay. They were okay. And I say they weren't bad. I really think the worst game of the weekend was the first game. That's why they put that on Saturday afternoon. Get that out of the way. I just appreciate and respect what the Eagles were able to do. Sure, do we like close games? Yes, we do like close games. But I can appreciate a blowout when a team is firing on all cylinders and is very talented and well prepared. And that's what we had with the Eagles. Sunday. Now, Sunday games made the weekend. First game was in Buffalo, and this was a showdown between the Bengals and the Bills, the game we didn't get to see in the regular season. I don't need to go into that other than the start of the game in Cincinnati. I picked the Bengals in this game. And I have to start off by just saying the weather. The weather, this is what NFL playoffs is all about. We saw 4 outdoor games this weekend. There were no dome games, no indoor games. This was what football should be. Outdoors. Please, outdoor football. There is nothing worse. I mean, I celebrate when the Saints aren't in the playoffs and are a divisional winner. I hate watching games in New Orleans at the Superdome. I do not enjoy watching games in Minnesota, especially when it's dark. It's one thing when it's lit up early in the day. I don't like watching games in Minnesota. I don't like watching games in Atlanta. I do not like watching games in Dallas. I like outdoor football. And to me, this was the perfect environment because it was a snow game and we got real snow, but it really didn't affect the outcome of the game. It didn't make it unplayable. It didn't feel like, well, one team had an advantage over the other or one team got lucky. No, not at all, because the Bills were the home team and the Bills lost. Joe Burrow versus Josh Allen. And what I said coming to this game was, although on paper the Bills may have a better defense, and maybe they're a little better in the trenches, I like the quarterback better. I like Joe Burrow better than I like Josh Allen right now. Josh Allen had a bad wild card game. And I am just not impressed with the Bills' defense. Burrow was so sharp. He wasn't trying to do too much. He was making the smart play, and he was making the short passes. He was making the intermediate passes. They were able to establish a ground game, which the Bills never were able to do. And the defense made Josh Allen uncomfortable. The Bengals outcoached the Bills. They outplayed the Bills. And they took over the game. They wanted it more. They were better prepared. And in my opinion, this was Joe Burrow's finest hour. I mean, give me the classic pocket passer any day over the guy who's the mobile quarterback. And that's not meant to be a slider. I'm not knocking Josh Allen necessarily because he can throw. I'm sorry, with all due respect to Lamar Jackson and some of these other runners, Josh Allen can really throw that football. And that's not also to say that Joe Burrow is just a statue and he can't move. I mean, he can pick up some yards when he needs to on the ground. He can buy a little extra time. He can run for a first down sometimes. But Joe Burrow looks like, just from a pocket passing perspective and going through the progressions and the reads and pocket presence, he looks as good as anyone. He looks like the best quarterback, and he can go and take anyone on right now. Mahomes, whoever he's going to face, which he will be doing this coming weekend. The Bengals really played as well as they could have under the circumstances, on the road, in the snow. Can't say enough about the coaching job by Taylor. They really played the perfect game, the perfect mistake-free road playoff game. And without a doubt, they are the best team left in the AFC. They have no reason to fear the Chiefs next weekend. They're a confident team. They're now a more experienced and more mature team than they were last year. And this was with multiple offensive linemen out, too. Don't forget that. And I was going to say, too, I meant to say this in the preview, in the review of the wild card week was, the problem with the Bills is I don't believe in their defense at any point. and they were going to miss Von Miller. But was that going to change the outcome? Let's just say they had Von Miller. Was that going to change the outcome of this game? No, it wasn't. No, the Bengals dominated, and it was not as close as the score indicated. It wasn't as close as the score was, really. They controlled it. And Josh Allen, I mean, it felt like the officials were trying to keep the Bills in the game. He lost, in my opinion, 2 fumbles. And one of them, that first one in the first half, the ball just slipped out of his hands. That was not an incomplete pass. That was a fumble. And the Bengals should have had more points on the board. It felt like, again, they were getting breaks, the Bills, and they still weren't able to take advantage of them. Well done by Bengals. I can't say enough about them. I'm not a Bengals fan, but I was sitting there applauding and tipping my cap to the Bengals, the way they played. And I give them respect for being a Super Bowl loser and fighting their way back to the championship game this year. Evening game. 49ers and Cowboys. This was now the 9th time these two historic franchises have faced each other, tied the most in NFL history for the playoffs. It was a rematch from last year, the divisional round, but the thing is, you can just throw out last year because both these teams were better than last year. Sometimes we have playoff games, it's very disappointing because the following year, sometimes the two teams are worse, or one team is significantly better than the other. This time around, it was different. Both teams were improved. And this was strange, and it was the first time that they'd ever played a playoff game in more of a prime time in their history. That actually went into the evening, and it was different now that they're doing this, that they're so concerned about prime time games. It was not until the championship game that it would be noon and say 3:30 p.m. that the championship games, that's West Coast, would be scheduled to get more viewers. But we were talking about this here to say many fans and commentators said that this was the biggest game in the history of Levi Stadium. And I'm one of those guys saying, I miss Candlestick. And it's been said, it was a dump, but it was our dump. And there was as many historic games played there as any stadium when you're considering championship games when the 49ers moved. There was an NFC championship game in 19 with the Packers, and 49ers and Packers is a big deal. But it's true, there's nothing like 49ers and Cowboys, and it was great that this game was outside. Would you rather have this game indoors in Dallas, played on turf, not under the night sky, but an enclosed stadium? I can't believe people. Levi Stadium has its faults. We know that. It does leave something to be desired. But give me outdoor football on real grass anytime over indoors with turf. I'll say that as much as I can. And another thing, the 49er fans invaded Dallas last year. It was 50-50. There were a lot of Cowboys fans, and there's a lot of bandwagon fans for the Cowboys. in fairness, as there is with the 49ers. And when you have had so much success throughout the decades, you're going to get that, and you're going to have fans everywhere. But it was not the same. It was not the invasion of Cowboy fans that we saw with 49er fans in Dallas last year. And this was it was a big deal. I mean, before the game, Joe Montana was there, Jerry Rice was there, Steve Young, Roger Craig, Charles Haley. I heard Ricky Waters was there, Patrick Willis was there. Great 49er after great 49er. Barry Bonds was out in the field with some of the greats. I would have loved to have seen a group picture of that. And this was the Fox game, and the Fox was just salivating with 49ers, Cowboys, playoffs. But now let's look at the game. Enough of that. This was a very physical game, and I was saying coming the game, I liked the 49ers, but it was going to be the team that won in the trenches that would win in the game, and that would win the divisional game. And the Cowboys were the better team in the second half. The Cowboys were the better team in the first half. They were very physical, and what they did was they did win the line of scrimmage. They played physical, and they stuffed the 49ers run, and they just put Micah Parsons all over the field. Sometimes he was playing an end. He was playing a lot of off-ball nickel linebacker. I mean, who affects a game like Micah Parsons? Nobody. Nobody does. It was a defensive struggle. Yards were hard to come by. And the Cowboys, they had the only touchdown of the first half. Maher, which I don't understand. Every time I've ever heard or seen the name, it's always been Mayer. For him, it's Maher. Well, he missed an extra point. And I'm glad that didn't end up being a deciding factor in the game. I do think it was a bit overblown. I know it was unusual what happened in Tampa Bay. This was on the scoreboard, it was a field goal fest, even though the Cowboys had the touchdown. And the Cowboys made Brock Purdy uncomfortable. They were getting to him. Their defensive front was beating the 49ers front. And the Cowboys found some success moving the ball down the field, like the Seahawks actually did in the wild card game. And one of the factors of this game was if these defenses have any weakness, it's the second cornerback. The 49ers had opportunities to make some big plays. They had an interception off of Prescott by Lenore, and they weren't able to punch it in. I mean, the defenses, when they were put in tough situations in this game, they held. I mean, Dan Quinn had his defense ready. They were prepared. They were disciplined. They were playing fast. They tackled extremely well. They did as good of a job on Christian McCaffrey as I've seen. They did as good of a job on Brock Purdy as I have seen. And McCaffrey seemed to have an injury, and he hurt his calf, but he stayed in there. One of the real, you could say it was the turning point that pushed this game in favor of the 49ers, even though he wasn't in any way, he didn't pull off any big plays. But when Tony Pollard went down, he had a high ankle sprain. It looked worse than that, too. It reminded me of Mahomes. That made the Cowboys one-dimensional because Ezekiel Elliott's got nothing. I mean, he is... I heard someone say, I think it was Larry Krueger, say that he's the oldest looking 27-year-old running back I've seen. And he's a former NFL scout. And he is slow. He does not have any spark left at all. And you remember when he came into the league, he had power and speed. Oh, it was so impressive. He is a shell of what he's just not even close to being what he was. And Pollard's been their best back. And when Pollard was injured, they did have a more difficult time moving down the field, even though, he wasn't exactly shredding the 49ers offense on the ground. The second half, though, was a 49er game. In the third quarter, which was the quarter that really decided it, in the second half of the third quarter, I was finally saying to myself, okay, the 49ers are playing 49er football and they're imposing their will. You know, it ended up being a 9-9 game because there was a special teams gaffe by McLeod. He coughs it up. The 49ers are able to stop the Cowboys and make them settle for a field goal. The 49ers finally found some success on the ground, and some of it was Elijah Mitchell, and Brock Purdy started making plays. He had a quieter game, and what I said in the preview was, George Kittle, you have got to get the ball. I feel like if there is one mismatch in this game, this is George Kittle's game. And the 49ers always decide to almost exclude George Kittle from the playoff game plans. And I'm just sitting there saying, why? You've got one of the most dynamic tight ends in the game. In my opinion, the best yak tight end in football. And you don't use him in the playoffs. And I don't care what the excuse is. Get him the ball. This is the modern NFL, and you have too many other weapons for him to get doubled and taken out of a game. He made the catch of the game. He had 95 yards receiving. It was by far his best playoff game. And there was just enough other plays made. You know, the thing about this was, what was the difference? Purdy he made some mistakes, but he didn't turn the football over. Prescott, on the other hand, turned the football over twice. And I don't think he was nearly as bad as people making him out to be. Was he great? Certainly not. But that final drive was a different story. I think he was all right until that final drive of the game. The 49ers won because their defense held. They didn't turn the football over, and they made enough plays. They did make halftime adjustments. I was frustrated with some of the play calling with Kyle Shanahan, especially in the first half. But he made adjustments in the second half. Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys offense, I think that left something to be desired. The defense played as well as you could have asked them to play. I'm not the biggest fan of Dan Quinn, but I do tip my cap to him. He was superb with defense. D'Amico Ryans also was very good. Both head coaching candidates, both deserve real consideration. Didn't talk too much about the 49ers defense. They were not spectacular, but they made enough plays. The Cowboys, Micah Parsons didn't register a sack, but he was all over the field. DeMarcus Lawrence was really good. The 49ers defense, another quiet game by Nick Bosa. There was a flag early in the game because he was getting held. I like him on the quarterback's back's, blind side. I don't understand. I think he's more effective on that side, in my opinion. The pass rush, the Cowboys' offensive line did a good job. They did. If I'm just going to point out one player on the 49ers defense, it was Fred Warner. He had an interception. He had a tackle for loss. He was in Dak Prescott's face. He was on it. This was one of the best games. I would say the best game he had all season for Fred Warner. Hufanga had a better game, didn't have a great second half. He made an impact. And then the ending of the game, that final possession. The 49ers made it more interesting. They should have, like they did last year. It didn't get to be that dramatic because if they messed it up at the end of the game, the Cowboys actually could have won. This time, the worst it would have been, most likely, it would have been a tie. The Cowboys get it back, and Eric Armstead on that final possession, he should have had a safety and sacked Dak Prescott, and he whiffed. Can you say that? And then Dre Greenlaw should have intercepted him as well. What can you say about that final play of the game? What was that? And then it was just a pass in the middle of the field? Did the Cowboys ever get cute, or did they ever get cute? I thought, yes, not a good game from Dak Prescott. I don't think it was a terrible game either. I thought he was awful on that final possession. Remember, he was going against the number one defense in the league on the road. But it's not to say he didn't make any plays. Again, what bothers me is after the game, you're going around looking at the various sites, and what is it all about? It's about the Cowboys losing. It's not about the 49ers winning. It's about the Cowboys losing. And can I repeat, it took them 30 years to win a road playoff game, and it was against a losing team last week. They have not won a divisional game. They have not advanced to the conference championship game, the title game for the NFC, since 1995 when they won their last Super Bowl. Yet this is the most important team in the NFL. The 49ers, since that time, yes, they have not won any Super Bowls either, but they have made it to 6 championship games, the most of any NFC team. Do they get the attention of the Cowboys? Not even half the attention of the Cowboys. They've been to Super Bowls. They've won as many Super Bowls as the Cowboys total. And what also really bothered me at the start of the game? This is the 49ers home game. And what team they show running on the field before the game? The Cowboys in San Francisco, not the 49ers. The home team, the team who's the favorite, the team who is more relevant right now, who has had more success over the last 20 years. And was it all about the Cowboys? Well, the good guys won this game. And is it sweet? Oh, it is so sweet to eliminate the Cowboys 2 years in a row. And we did a favor to the NFL, not Roger Goodell, but at least we can say we did a favor to football fans that we can stop talking about the Cowboys, because I'm going to stop talking about the Cowboys right now. The good news is we got 2 exciting championship games to look forward to. First one, 49ers and Eagles in Philadelphia. Never happened before. They played each other in the playoffs in San Francisco, but they've never played a playoff game in Philadelphia. You have the hottest team in the NFL has won 12 straight against the team that's the number one seed in the NFC. This is what we want to see. This is the kind of championship game I want. Two loaded, stacked teams against each other. And then the AFC, we have the Chiefs hosting the Bengals for the second straight year. Burrow versus Mahomes. Maybe some folks would have rather had Bills and Chiefs. We're going to have a good game on our hands, and they're both going to be outside, on grass, the way football is meant to be played. Yes, I am excited. Look forward to previewing these two championship games. And that means we got 4 good teams. We should get a good Super Bowl.